There's a famous saying, facts tell, stories sell. Everyone, brands, writers, filmmakers, celebrities, influencers, and even the audience is always on the lookout for good stories.
Big Astoria!
Hi folks, welcome to the part 5 of Cloud Fondue Films video marketing machine. Today we are going to talk about converting ideas into stories. Before we get started, I wanted to mention two important texts which is the foundational work for storytelling both in India and the West respectively. One is Natya Shastra by Bharat Muni and the other one is Poetics by Aristotle. Both have very different but very interesting approach towards storytelling. Maybe we'll get to that in a future video. If you want to, please mention it in the comments. Okay, so back to the stories. So how do you get started with a story? Well, you start from the start. You start with the basics by mentioning character, the place where the story takes place, the time period, all the elements. Or maybe why don't you start from the end?
What did you say?
That's not right. How can we start from the end? Shouldn't we do the end in the end? No. It's very important to know what your ending is before you get started. And the reason why I'm saying that is because if you start without an ending, if you don't know where the story ends, chances are you will keep on meandering throughout. But if you know where the story ends and you work your way backwards, you will have a clear path in which you take your story forward. So that's the basic thing. If you're writing a story, start with the conclusion. Now, in case of a marketing video, our end goal is to highlight the product, brand, or service, right? So how do we achieve that? We achieve that by mentioning a clear call to action. So in case of a marketing video, if it's like a sales-based or conversion-based video, have a clear call to action where you can have something that pushes the audience to take a certain action. So let's say if you want them to sign up for something, you mention that, you link that in the end. Or if you want them to make a contact, you mention the contact details there. But what if you're doing videos which are on a recurring basis, where there you have a call to action where you ask the people to subscribe, like us. But what if it's neither? What if the idea of this video is to make an impression?
I am impressed.
Well, making an impression should always be the end goal because you want to create an impact, right? A good story structure is what will enable making this impression.
Interesting.
So this is what a basic story structure looks like. Every story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. The story begins somewhere, there is something happening in the middle of the story, and then at one point it ends. In screenwriting, there's a classic 3-act structure which talks about exactly this. Now, I don't want to get into the detail of that, so I've simplified it for us. So what is that? Well, the story begins somewhere, right? Then there is a middle part. But what drives that middle part? Conflict. Conflict happens which drives the middle part, and most of the time the story is spent trying to solve a certain conflict. But who solves that conflict? There's a hero. Of course, there's always a hero that is solving the conflict.
Yeah, of course.
Once the hero overcomes the conflict is resolved and the story ends. This is the most basic structure that you can virtually find in any story that you come across. Now, in case of a marketing video, how do you use this structure? Well, simple. You make the brand the hero, obviously, and you establish the problem. So here's what you do. Establish the problem and then establish your brand, the hero, as the solution. Simple. Now, in order to understand this better, let's look at an example. So this is a film that we made for a company called Biological E. Biological E is a pharmaceutical and a vaccine manufacturing company. Cloud Fondue Films worked with them a few years back for a campaign that they did when they did the launch of the typhoid vaccine. The campaign was Power to Protect. Very beautiful campaign. The idea was that vaccines provide protection to children by protecting them against disease. So when they grow up, they have the power to protect themselves. Today, we all know the importance of vaccines, so a message like this just seems obvious. But back then, it wasn't. And for us, what was more challenging is that we had 4 days. Yes, 4 days to make the entire film. That was kind of crazy.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So the brief given to us, apart from this campaign, was that over millions of kids die every year from vaccine preventable disease. And that is where Biological E comes in. They manufacture around 2 million doses every day and supply vaccines to 120 countries across the world. So this was some basic information that was given to us. Now we had to turn this into a story. So how did we do that? Well, let's watch the film together right now. It's a 2-minute film, so let it play in the video. And at the end of the video, we can discuss what we did. I hope you like the film. We actually put together the story for this film in less than 3 hours. So here's what we did. When we got those interesting facts, we realized that wow, they're making a really big impact. But when we started thinking deeper, that okay, we are talking about numbers, but the problem with numbers is something we said earlier. Facts tell, stories sell. So we can't just put the facts up there. It has to be more personal. So that's when we realized that we can visualize the lives of the kids getting affected by this. We realized that how there were kids all across the world who were experiencing this issue and how through the vaccine that story was changing. And that's exactly what we did in the film, as you saw. So I hope you folks got a good idea of how to structure a story. Next time when you write a story, remember always start from the end, know what your conclusion is, and use the beginning, middle, and end structure to structure your story. And of course, make your brand the hero of the story. That's all for today, folks. Next episode, we'll be discussing production. But before we go, please share, like, you know the drill, just do it. And please tell everyone about this. We have put in all our energy to bring this out to you for free. So please help us spread the word. Thank you.